Hey, you guys. Cheryl here, 27, female. Let's go into this mess. So, about 6 years ago, I decided it was time for a change. So I packed up my crap from Scotland and I landed in Texas, ready to explore my new stomping grounds. I'm a sucker for good pasta, and Benji's, a bistro not too far from my place, became my go-to spot. Now, usual hostess, Geneva, was missing in action one day. I heard she was sick or something, but stepping in to take orders and help manage the place was her son, Tobias. Now, let me tell you, I was blushing like a schoolgirl. Tobias was a sight for sore eyes, and as a bonus, he could cook up a storm. He seemed to be checking on my table a bit more often than necessary, and, well, I wasn't complaining. Seemed like he was feeling the connection too. When it was time to settle the bill, I thought, why not be bold? So I slipped my number into the bill book, hoping he'd notice. I left, fingers crossed, and for a couple of days it was crickets. I was almost ready to call it quits and move on with my life. But not long after, Tobias texted me. Apparently, he was caught up taking care of Geneva, and that's why he responded a bit late. I was over the moon. I really liked this guy and was curious to see where things could go. Love at first sight? Maybe not, but Tobias made me believe in possibilities. I was practically living at Benji's by then, just to catch a glimpse of Tobias. The funny thing was that Tobias started pulling extra shifts even when Geneva was back and feeling fine. Suspicion alert. Geneva, being the clever mom she was, caught on. She'd often tease us, making jokes and playing matchmaker whenever she saw a bit of flirting going on. It felt like I was in some adorable rom-com, and trust me, Texas sunshine beats the drab Scottish weather any day. Life was good, and I was glad. You two are just the cutest, Tobias. When are you going to take this lovely girl on a date? Mom, please. Yeah, Tobias, when are you going to take me out? See, soon enough, if I'm lucky, I'm going to hear little pitter-patters all over these floors. Not soon enough. Geneva, Tobias, and I were practically becoming a trio. Sometimes I even helped out at the bistro when they were short-staffed. Life was sailing smoothly, and I couldn't have asked for anything better. Finally, Tobias and I officially went on a date. It was perfect, a picnic in the park, followed by ice cream. During this date, Tobias shared that he took his time asking me out because of a past relationship that left him burned. He wanted to ensure that this time around it was something meaningful and serious. We were together since we were 16, and she just cheated on me with that guy. Woof, that must have been very tough. The toughest. My mom was so mad, she really thought that we were going to get married, And now, well, anytime she sees her picture or hears her name, she scowls. Sounds like she was an awful person. I'm serious when it comes to love, Cheryl. I'm not one to play around, but my mom has been giving me a lot of crap for not being with someone. Why? Tobias went on to share that his mom had some pretty strict Italian roots, and she really wanted a lot of grandkids. Being her only child, he felt the pressure to fulfill that desire. Family was a significant thing for him, and that's why he was serious about finding the one. Curious about why his mom, Geneva, only had one child despite her desire for a large family, I asked. The conversation took a darker turn. Tobias revealed that his mom had faced significant challenges. She had gone through about 7 miscarriages before finally having Tobias. The doctors informed her about fertility issues and advised against having more children. It was indeed a tough situation. That's why she's always on my case about getting settled down. I'm 24. My dad was married by the time he was 22. Damn. But I told her that this was my life and that I had to go according to my schedule, can't live the rest of my life regretting a decision I made when I was so young. We had been dating for 5 years, and that's when Tobias decided to pop the question. It happened in the bistro, and he orchestrated a surprise with everyone's help. It was a romantic and cozy moment, and I'll cherish it forever. The excitement was palpable, especially from Geneva, who went all out to celebrate the proposal. She danced, prepared a feast, and invited the whole neighborhood. Tobias was head over heels for me, ready to settle down. On our wedding night, flying to Bali for our honeymoon, Tobias expressed his deep commitment. He promised to dedicate his life to taking care of me and our future children. Fast forward about a year into our marriage, and I was celebrating my 27th birthday. We hosted the celebration at the bistro, and everything was going well until I needed to wash my hands. To my surprise, Geneva followed me into the bathroom and even entered with me. It felt a bit odd, but she was my mother-in-law, so I figured maybe we didn't have boundaries anymore. I asked her what was going on, and she started bombarding me with really invasive questions about my fertility. It was weird, right? I didn't know what to make of it, and her creepy line of questioning was making me uncomfortable and irritated, especially on my birthday. So I asked her why she was asking, and she dropped the wildest comment. Well, it's just that Toby hasn't told me of any pregnancy news yet, and I was wondering when you two would, get to it. Well, we're just going with the flow, When the time comes, it will come. That moment marked a shift in everything. Geneva's expression darkened suddenly, as if I had just told her that her house had burned down. She looked cold and distant, and I asked if she was okay. She insisted everything was fine, urging us to return to the party. Trying to brush off this strange encounter, I continued to enjoy the rest of my birthday celebration. However, when the party was over and we were tidying up at Benji's, Geneva remained cold and distant. I asked once again if everything was okay, and man, that turned out to be a mistake. Alone with Geneva, because Tobias had gone to pick up his German Shepherd from doggy daycare, she literally exploded, yelling at me. She insisted I shouldn't touch her or speak to her if I wasn't going to give her grandbabies. What? I was so freaking confused. And in really strange situations like these, absurd ones, I sometimes chuckle or laugh in disbelief. It's not that I find it funny, it's just that the craziness of the moment overwhelms me, Anyway, I did just that, and it seemed to push Geneva over the edge. She didn't like my reaction one bit. Geneva started yelling, and it felt like a never-ending stream of insults. She called me all sorts of things, switching between English and Italian and then back to English when she realized I couldn't understand what she was saying. It was so chaotic, I felt like a tornado had been let loose in the bistro. You're so selfish! How could you do this to me? Geneva, please, you need to relax. This isn't good for your blood pressure. What seems to be the problem? The problem? I'll tell you the problem. My son married an idiot. That's the problem. A selfish, bratty, stupid idiot who only thinks about herself. Geneva, we've only been married for a year. Could you cut us some slack? I knew you were bad news from the moment you got here. I always knew that you had something evil about you. Geneva, you sound like a crazy person. How could you speak to me that way? You better pray to God that I don't force my son to kick you to the curb, you ingrate. It all felt like a fever dream. I even forgot it was my birthday. I couldn't wait to go home and salvage the rest of my birthday with my husband. I planned on telling him everything. I mean, he was my husband. He needed to know everything. But when I got home and found the door locked, I knew he wasn't home. Which was strange because I was expecting him to be home already. Tobias was running late, so I figured I'd make some food and clean the house. 3 hours gone by. He wasn't responding to any of my texts or calls. Panic set in, I called Geneva and she dropped the angry act, genuinely panicking when I asked about him, which made my anxiety worse. We called his friends and his co-workers with no luck. It felt like I was going crazy. Geneva said that she'd call me if she heard anything, and I told her likewise. A couple more hours later, Geneva finally called, and her wailing broke my heart instantly. I knew deep down that something terrible had happened to him. Geneva told me that Toby got into a really bad accident on the highway. Some drunk loser was speeding and crashed into him, killing him instantly. Words couldn't describe what I felt. It was like everything had gone black and white. Refusing to believe it, I got my keys and headed to Geneva's place. We held each other, sobbing until we had to go to the hospital to see his body before it was taken away. My world had fallen apart and I didn't know if I would be able to move on. Peeling a grieving mother away from her son's body in the mortuary was tough. One of the worst things I've had to do. I didn't think I could sleep alone that night, understandably, so I was going to ask Geneva to come over, or if I could stay with her, because really we're all we had left. Tobias was the glue that stuck us together, especially after our little tiff earlier. I thought we could hold some more space and empathy for each other, but before I could even open my mouth, she started yelling at me again. I swear, the car must have been shaking from the way she was yelling. We hadn't even left the hospital yet. I told her to calm down because I was getting fed up too. When did this lady think it was okay to bully me just because she was feeling bad? I was feeling bad too. Geneva, what is your problem? It's all your fault. How is any of this my fault? If you didn't have your stupid party, he wouldn't have to go and pick up that stupid dog, and none of this would have happened. Why didn't you have the party at your house? Geneva, you're the one who offered to host it at Benji's. I know your heart is broken, shattered, but please be reasonable. You have no idea what I'm going through. Yes, I do. I also lost him, Geneva. Can't you see that? You think you could possibly compare yourself to me? You must be on crack or something. You think that marriage can compare to flesh and blood? I gave birth to him. He is an extension of me. It feels like I've been amputated, Cheryl. Do you know what that feels like? You couldn't possibly know what that feels like because you've never had a child. Geneva, you need help. We both do, can't you see? The grief is doing this to you. Please, let's go back to my house and... No! Don't you dare call it your house. That was my son's house, a house that you're no longer welcome in. What? You heard me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This lady was trying to kick me out of my home just because I couldn't give her a grandchild? Don't get me wrong. I know losing a child must be the worst feeling any parent could experience. And people grieve in different ways, but kicking me out of the house was a bit much. She was just going full wicked witch at that point. We were yelling back and forth, and the car was fogging up with all of our yelling. She then told me that I needed to drive her home, to my home, so that she could watch me pack my bags and move out. Even though I wanted to drop her out of my car and let her walk home, I bit my tongue for the millionth time that night and I drove us home, thinking that once she sat down and I got her a cup of tea or something, she would calm down. But apparently, she was dead serious. She told me that I needed to pack my bags ASAP. You can't kick me out of here. What is wrong with you? This is my home. Not anymore, it's not. If you think you're sleeping here tonight, you got another thing coming. This is my son's home. I'm the one sleeping here tonight, not you. Where am I supposed to go, huh? I don't care. Go and die in a hole somewhere for all I care. You know what? Screw you, Geneva. She ignored me and immediately went upstairs. I followed her, finding her in my bedroom trying to pack my things. I told her to let go of my stuff, and we began to tussle a bit as I was pulling my clothes away from her, and she started cursing and yelling at me some more. I was so exhausted at that point. It had been the worst birthday ever, and this woman was just trying to add insult to injury. "You're a piece of trash. You were never worthy to be part of this family." Then I said something that really struck a nerve with her, but it had to be said. "Listen, Tobias told me everything." "What?" "He told me about the miscarriages." "What? How dare you? Don't you dare! I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. I am so sorry. But you can't take out your frustrations on me, and you can't expect me to fulfill your dreams because you were unable to fulfill yours." Oh, she didn't like that at all. She really turned up the heat, calling me all these names that I can't repeat because I don't cuss and because this is YouTube. It was really nasty. I had never been spoken to like that in my life. I swear she even managed to get me a bit teary-eyed because just wow. I had nothing else to say. I had been completely drained because I was living my worst nightmare. I just stared at her blankly as she continued to rant and rage. When she was done, I let her go. I wasn't about to deal with any more drama that night. I was still trying to process my own feelings. So I went downstairs and poured myself a glass of wine while I heard my mother-in-law angrily cursing and packing my things out of sheer spite. I couldn't believe everything had turned upside down so fast. After about an hour or so, she had packed most of my things and was throwing them down the stairs, telling me that I needed to get out as soon as possible because she was disgusted by my presence. I continued to stare at her blankly, and she told me to stop staring. "Why? Is it because you feel guilty?" "Guilty for what? You're not wanted here. Don't you get that? You are of no use to this household anymore. I hope you die out there in the streets." She shoved my belongings in my arms and she told me that I needed to get out before she called the cops. I was fuming at that point, but I did what I was told because I didn't want to be in the house with that hag anyway. I had to awkwardly call up one of the nicer workers at the bistro and ask if they could accommodate me for the time being. She had always been a sweetheart, and she was just as crushed when we had texted the staff in the WhatsApp group with the news. And she said she was more than happy to take me in. I was so grateful because this girl didn't owe me anything. If anything, she had every right to report back to her boss since her loyalties lay with her, but she was a good Samaritan and I'll forever be indebted to her. I was so hurt and angry with my mother-in-law. I couldn't believe she did what she did. I spent the next couple of days crying myself to sleep. The tears just wouldn't stop. Geneva didn't reach out, and neither did I. I felt like I was owed an apology, but I knew that Geneva wouldn't budge. I was just waiting to hear about the funeral details so that I could pay my respects to my husband and mourn him properly. The funeral was the longest day of my life. It was so hard trying to keep it all together and also battle my mother-in-law, who insisted that I shouldn't even attend the funeral. I mean, could you imagine? Luckily, a lot of friends and family were against it, wondering why she was being so cruel. Many of them didn't know that she hated me and kicked me out of the house. I figured that it wasn't the time or the place to let them know just how awful she was, and I guess she was too scared to face the heat. So she agreed to let me pay my respects, but she wasn't happy one bit. I had managed to get into a motel that I was going to hole up in for a while. I didn't want to overstay my welcome at my friend's place, so I did just that. 1 week after being kicked out of the house, I woke up with the sudden urge to puke. Now, let me tell you, I have the gut of a goat. I never throw up, even when I'm really ill. So imagine my surprise when I found myself hunched over the toilet and emptying the contents of my stomach as if I drank way too much at a frat party. It was insane. But then something told me that I was pregnant. I laughed it off, but I thought, what if? So I went to the nearby pharmacy, bought 4 different pregnancy tests, and went back to the motel. I peed on all of the sticks and waited for the results, and wouldn't you know it, I was pregnant. All of them said positive, and I was immediately hit with a crap ton of emotions. I'm sure the other motel residents could hear me crying and sobbing and laughing and crying some more. They probably thought I was a crazy woman, but I didn't care. I was pregnant. But I couldn't share this news with the most important person in my life, and my heart was swelling, yet breaking at the same time. 3 months went by and I was definitely showing. It was all so surreal. I should have been glowing, and I was, don't get me wrong, but I would be lying if I said my glow would sometimes fade on those particularly hard days. I was doing this crap all by myself with no support, and with a broken heart. I was taking it day by day, trying to cope with everything as well as get myself back on my feet. And let's just say I was doing pretty well for myself. You see, I was doing some journalism work as well as graphic design to pay the bills. I found a cute little apartment that was already in the works of getting some stuff together for my baby. I was set to have a boy, and I couldn't have been happier. I was in Walmart shopping for some groceries, and that's when I saw her. It was Geneva. She had also seen me, and we were locking eyes. Then she looked down and saw my belly, and she started marching towards me. When she got up to me, she said, "Really? Already? You secretly wanted him dead, didn't you? You're such a... It's his baby." What? "I found out 1 week after you... Well, yeah." Geneva's face started to crumple, and she looked like she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She went in to touch my belly, trying to smile and stop herself from crying in Walmart, but I moved away, getting the attention of some passerby who were probably wondering what was going on between us. Geneva looked hurt, like she was the one who had to suffer the wrath of a crazy woman. Insane. She started begging and pleading for me to come back into her life, saying that this would change everything. I scoffed at her and told her that she didn't even have the decency to apologize for what she did. Geneva tried to play it off like she didn't try to ruin my life, saying that it was in the past and she couldn't admit that she was being a bit overdramatic at times. But that's just because she was grieving. I reminded her that she kicked me out of my home with no plan in the middle of the night, all because I couldn't give her a grandchild. "But look, now you can! You must be crazy if you think I'm letting you anywhere near my son." "Son? It's a boy?" "Yep, and you'll never see him." "You can't do that. I'll sue." "Good luck with that. I'll just tell them how crazy you are. And they'll believe me. I mean, just look at you. Look at the attention you're drawing to yourself." She looked around and noticed the stares growing. Taking a proper look at her, she looked like she hadn't showered since the last time I saw her. Her hair was a bit frazzled, and she had these crazy eyes. "I don't care if they're looking. You can't keep my grandchild away from me." "Yes, I can, and I will. You're a disgusting human being, and I thank God every day that Tobias didn't get to see who you truly were. Now my only job is to take care of my little one, and that starts with getting him as far away from you as possible. If you ever see me again, it'll be too soon. I hope you have a miserable life and you feel 10 times worse than I did the night he died." She kept on begging and pleading with me, but I had to cut my shopping trip short just so I could get in my car and drive away from her, because she was following me around like a lost puppy. She even started apologizing, a lot even, but I wouldn't budge. The damage had been done.